What's up, gamers? Have you ever wanted to waste money just because a product you're interested in throws in some unsold merchandise and garbage you don't care about? Well, do I have some news for you.
Special editions! Every consumer's favorite way to hate themselves. But what really is a special edition? I would personally describe it as an alternate version of a game re-released with some extra digital or physical content. I also want to mention collector's editions and player choice games, and the problems that come with them, so I'll throw those in the description as well. Now, this might seem like a good concept on paper, giving people the chance to buy everything at once, which can be great for something like a gift for a kid. The collector's edition then gives fans of a series a chance to get a cool display item and some small trinkets related to the series. And for the player's choice games, it gives people an easy way to see a popular game that's been marked down in price. But you see, there has been a major oversaturation problem with these special editions. What once was just standard and deluxe has now become ultimate, digital deluxe, gold, gold digital, etc. I mean, just look at the games that have 4+ different versions of the same game, with none of them having all of the extra content. Why would anybody want to get a game ever when you have to look at a spreadsheet to figure out what you're buying? I mean, I get having separate versions for both old and new generations of consoles, but why does the digital version need to be separate from the standard? Thankfully, this is mostly restricted to the big names, like Ubisoft and EA, with the others having an Ultimate Edition carrying everything you can get. Though it really sucks, as every once in a while, a game that in no way needs more than 2 versions gets 5 or more. Look at Control, for example. You really couldn't have added the digital items on a code in the case somewhere? Things get even more confusing with what I like to call the Origins effect, named after Overwatch Origins Edition, because that's technically the standard edition on consoles, despite there being a separate standard edition on PC. This effect also applies to games that just say bonus edition or extras edition when they're actually the standard, such as Sonic Forces. Going back to Overwatch though, what I'm trying to say is that they called the game Origins Edition on console as if there was a standard for people to buy. I don't know whether or not to be mad at this, because on one hand, why wouldn't you just call it the standard, as there's no console equivalent? However, on the other hand, it doesn't cause confusion for people on why the standard for consoles includes more content compared to the PC standard. I just don't get why Blizzard chose to not have a standard edition for consoles, rather than remove both and make Origins the standard. Day 1 and launch editions are a strange case too. Of course, the incentive here is to show that you bought the game early and have been a supporter of the franchise, yet it never really works out that way. For up to about 3 months ago, I've seen copies of Spider-Man Miles Morales Launch Edition on the shelves, which was over a year old at that point, truly proving you bought the game at launch apparently. The only real reward for getting these over the normal game is a skin for the character, which I have a love-hate relationship with. It doesn't really lock anything away, but it really doesn't reward the player either. Now, you could say, well actually, the reward is having that version of the game to begin with, and that would be true if it was only available at launch, but it just isn't, going back to what I said earlier. Of course, no company would recall their product just because it wasn't bought on day 1, but still. My personal theory on this is that the gaming companies only make launch editions in order to take up more shelf space at a store, thus lowering competition space. This isn't even touching the surface of weird versions of games though, as there's also Game of the Year editions. This was used on games as a way to show off that their game is award winning, but will also release it with the DLC included, which is perfectly okay for companies to advertise their game with this title, if they actually won the award.
Yeah, that's right. I want a Nobel Peace Prize.
For a while, Game of the Year became interchangeable with definitive editions, which is pretty scummy if you ask me. A parent or someone not interested in gaming will buy the game as a gift just because of this subtitle. Now, the argument can be brought up that there are thousands of game reviewing sites, so they very well could have won Game of the Year, just not from a popular source. But why should someone have to check whether or not the people who gave out the reward are reputable? In my opinion, it should only have this title if BAFTA, the Game Awards, or any insanely well-known site like IGN, Kotaku, Polygon, GameSpot, etc. labeled it as their Game of the Year. Also, Game of the Year edition is such a weird way of phrasing it, as it implies that this specific version of the game won the reward. So, overall, the strangest thing is that the fact that the phrase definitive edition is right there, waiting to be used, yet they choose Game of the Year edition. Player's Choice games are in a weird space of being both a special edition while just being the game. There isn't any added content to the game like the DLC being included, but if you show someone these two versions of Mario 3D World, they can clearly spot the difference. The whole point is to show a popular game that was reprinted for a lower price, yet they managed to make it ugly every single time. One of the first appearances of the term Player's Choice was on the SNES and N64, where you just get a gold ribbon on the box and cartridge. This is honestly the best way to do the Player's Choice branding, as it doesn't change enough to make it look weird next to your other games, but you can still easily identify it. The Game Boy does something similar, which is common for all handhelds, as they just copy whatever the home console at the time is doing. Moving on to Sega, they had their Sega Classics run, which is alright, I guess. It isn't ugly beyond belief, but it still compresses the game's box art. Now we get to the abomination category with the PS1. And who the hell thought bright green with red text was a good idea for a game case? This only draws attention to it because of how ugly it is, and it looks terrible next to other PS1 games. This seems to be a common trend for a lot of these player choice games, as if they were made with the sole purpose to ruin the look of any game collection. The GameCube comes in to perfectly demonstrate this. They put a yellow banner at the top stating that the game is in fact a player's choice title, which would be completely fine if the disease didn't spread to the spine. Why did they do this? And on top of that, I bet they only chose yellow due to how far off it is from the standard game spines. It would make at least a little sense if it was gold, but no, they had to make it the most basic yellow they could find. The original Xbox partially uses this idea of a valuable metal, but instead of going for gold, they go for more of a platinum aesthetic for a border, which could work, yet they make it look so grimy and deteriorated. I don't think when looking at a Platinum Hits title, man, this game is truly a premium product. I think, what garbage bin did this thing crawl out of? The spine of the game looks odd too, as they continue the platinum onto it, with just a cutout of the logo being on top of that. But just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, here comes the PS2, with it making the console heading and spine red. This is just more of why player choice games don't look good. They make them random colors. At least with something like the Dreamcast, they used orange, which was the color of the console's logo. The red coloring sadly continues to the PS3, with the case being a solid red as well this time, which I hate even more. They didn't even bother to make it a clear red to match with the normal PS3 clear cases. The Wii and Wii U had Nintendo Selects, which adds this red border to the case, and thankfully doesn't affect the spine. This is a really great example of what to do for player choice games, though it'd be even better if they removed the border and just left the Nintendo Selects badge. The worst one of them all has to be Xbox 360's Platinum Hits, as they started with a similar concept to the original Xbox. Then they moved the Platinum Hits title to the header, which, yeah, sure. But why does Platinum Hits have to be written out on the spine as well? And when they finally got a good design that only had a badge and nothing on the spine, they scrapped it for another design similar to the second version. Yet they made the header of the front and spine a gradient of gray to white, making it harder to read. For the spine itself, it looks like someone forgot to finish the template, as it's just the game's title on the most boring font with a white background. It wouldn't matter that much, but the fact that Microsoft couldn't make up their mind, and they were like, that one didn't work out, it's fine, we'll just move over to the next one, and that there were this many instances of it, makes displaying these games so weird looking.
Your Honor, I know I killed a guy, but I changed my mind, so we're all good, right?
Thankfully, the player's choice branding has been relegated to just a badge, banner, or is gone in its entirety in recent years. Something that has only increased though would be collector editions. Some of these are super cool, having a statue/model of a character or item within the game. Along with this, they include an art book, posters, a steelbook case, a physical copy of the soundtrack, and some other things with things like lore on them. These are really cool and for the most part worth their price, but some get way overcharged to something over $300. Which at that point, just include the statue or model separately unless it's something just meant to be a crazy amount of money, like Dying Light's My Apocalypse edition, which was a little under 200,000 American dollars. This is a problem with special editions in general, where they overcharge for way more than they're worth. If the price of the game gets to $100 when all it has is DLC and player skins, it is in no way worth it. Collector's editions have another problem due to the steelbook case. I have no problems with the case itself, as they usually have some sleek designs with awesome artwork. I personally don't like them either though, as they look kind of odd when displayed next to regular games. I would love to see a full collection of steelbook case games, but I personally would choose a normal case of game most of the time, which shows in my collection, as my only steelbook game is Call of Duty Advanced Warfare of all games, which was given to me by my brother. You can see my actual cause for concern with steelbook cases is the fact that some collector editions don't include the actual game. So what's even the point of the steelbook case? Are you supposed to use it as a coaster? But what gets even weirder is when the game is included, but in the form of a digital code. At least you can make the argument that the collector's edition was supposed to be a separate product from the game, when it isn't included at all. Though with the digital code, it just leaves the steelbook case to sit there. The problem happens to the soundtracks a lot too, as if you were to sell a soundtrack of a game, this is where to include it as a bonus. But unless it's from an indie game, you can bet that half of the tracks are going to be missing.
Do I think that special editions, player choice games, and collector's editions shouldn't exist? No, they're a great part of the gaming industry. It's just they need a lot of change in order to become as great as possible. But sadly, people are going to keep buying overpriced games just because it says the word Ultimate on it. Never mind all of that, I just paid $50 for a piece of paper that says Gold Edition on it. What a steal!